Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something that's probably sitting just a few feet away from you right now. Always on smart home devices, your AOS HDs.
That's right. We're talking about the whole ecosystem. The smart speakers, your Alexa, your Google Nest, but also the connected cameras, doorbells, even smart fridges.
And the argument from our sources is pretty stark.
It is. The core idea is that these devices, sold to us on the promise of convenience, are actually normalizing a kind of pervasive surveillance. And they're doing it in our most private space, our homes.
It's a trade-off. We get a little convenience, and in return, we accept this constant monitoring.
A trade-off many don't even realize they're making.
Okay, let's unpack this. So if the hardware, the device itself, is often sold so cheaply, sometimes even as a giveaway, what's the actual business model driving all this data collection?
It all comes down to what's now widely called surveillance capitalism. The profit isn't really in the hardware sale. That's just the beginning.
That gets the device in the door.
Exactly. The real value, the real engine, is in aggregating, analyzing, and then monetizing all the behavioral data that these devices are constantly scooping up.
And that data fuels, what, targeted ads?
That's a big part of it, yes. But it's also used to train and develop new AI features. The data is the raw material.
And the scale of this.
Yeah.
It's not a niche thing anymore.
Not at all. The proliferation is staggering. We're looking at data that shows by 2025, over 30% of all households in the U.S. will have at least one smart speaker.
Wow. 1 in 3.
And that's just speakers. When you add in the cameras, the thermostats, the smart lighting, your home stops being just a home. It becomes a data-generating node in a huge corporate network.
So our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. We need to really analyze the anatomy of how this data is captured, what the real security and psychological risks are, and then give you, the listener, some concrete steps to take back control. Let's start there, then. The anatomy of ambient surveillance. These devices work using something called ambient intelligence, or AMI. We know they hear our voice commands, but what else are they really collecting? All day, every day.
Well, it's way more than most people think. AMI relies on a whole array of sensors. Of course, you have the microphones and cameras, the obvious ones.
Right.
But they also have things like passive infrared motion sensors, PIR sensors, temperature and light sensors. They're tracking presence, movement, environmental conditions.
And I saw something in the sources about chemical sensors in a smart speaker.
Yes, increasingly.
Right.
To track things like VOCs, volatile organic compounds, or CO2 levels.
Why on earth would my speaker care about the CO2 in my living room?
Because that data point, when you combine it with all the others, helps build an incredibly detailed picture of activity. The data scope goes so far beyond play this song.
So what are we talking about?
We're talking voice prints of the unique sound of your voice, detailed movement patterns within your house. It learns your routines, when you wake up, when you leave, how often you have visitors.
And then there's the big one, the accidental recordings.
That's the most critical part, the completely unguarded internal conversations that get unintentionally recorded because of a false positive.
That feels like the core of the problem right there. That moment, a private chat in the kitchen becomes, well, corporate data. How does that happen?
The mechanism is pretty standard. The devices are in what they call an always listening mode. To be ready for the wake word, like Alexa, they have to constantly buffer audio locally.
So it's always recording.
It's always recording a short loop, yeah. Usually about 5 to 30 seconds. It records and then immediately deletes over and over.
Until it thinks it hears the wake word.
Precisely. And if a false acceptance happens, the device mishears something like, I like the Mets, as the wake word. That buffered audio, that private snippet you never meant to share, gets tagged as relevant and uploaded straight to the cloud, to AWS or Google Cloud for analysis.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Once they have that snippet of audio or a bit of motion data, how does that raw ambient stuff get transformed into something that's actually sensitive, something valuable?
That's the magic of the AI and the machine learning. That's the data profiling stage. All that raw data gets processed to create a really deep inferred profile. It's like they're building a digital twin of your household.
And from that, they can infer things you never told them.
Exactly. They can infer sensitive information.
Okay, give me an example.
Health status is a big one. Let's say the microphone picks up frequent coughing or sleep patterns get disrupted. The motion sensors see less activity. An AI could infer a chronic illness.
Wow.
Or a change in routine could suggest a change in socioeconomic status. Maybe someone's work schedule changed from a 9 to 5 to shift work. It can infer family structure, approximate ages, even private activities like how often you cook, when you shower, or what you're watching on TV.
And the sources mention this idea of a household fingerprint.
Right. By linking all these patterns to a unique device identifier, a UUID, they can create a profile that is absolutely traceable back to you.
So it's not just my name and email anymore, it's my inferred behaviors, my health patterns. That's the product.
And that inferred data can be far, far more sensitive than the basic PII.
Which takes us right into our second section, the stakes. Once they have this incredibly sensitive inferred data, where does it go? Who's in this data supply chain?
Well, the whole model depends on sharing it. It goes to advertising networks, that's the obvious one, for hyper-targeted ads, but it also goes to partner companies. And this can include insurance companies, looking to price risk, or healthcare providers, researchers building new AI models. The list is long.
And this brings up the huge ethical problem of bystander privacy.
A critical gray area. These things collect data on people who never consented. Your friends who visit, the person delivering a package, even a roommate who isn't the primary user.
The Ring doorbell is the classic example of this, right?
The most blatant. It's capturing footage from public sidewalks, from the street. It's pulling in total strangers, your neighbors, all managed through a private corporate cloud network. It's effectively privatizing public surveillance.
Let's shift a bit to the psychological cost. What does it do to us knowing we're being constantly monitored in our own homes?
The first, there's a definite loss of autonomy. The systems are built for data capture, not for user control. But the biggest thing researchers talk about is the chilling effect.
Is that a real measurable thing, though? Or is it just a theory? I mean, if I'm worried, can I just move out of the camera's view?
It's very well documented.
Yeah.
And it's deeper than just stepping out of frame. It's the constant low-level awareness that you might be recorded. It changes the spontaneity of your behavior.
You start self-censoring.
You self-censor in your own home. You might not have that difficult conversation, or you might act differently because you're just not sure if the microphone is active or what's being inferred from your movements. The private space, it literally shrinks.
The idea that we're actively holding back in our own sanctuary, that's deeply disturbing.
And this all feeds into a normalization of surveillance. The marketing is all about safety, and these neighborhood apps make us feel like constant monitoring is normal, even good.
And there are equity risks baked into this, too.
Huge ones. This rise of participatory surveillance, where people willingly share their camera footage with the police, can amplify existing biases. Studies show these cameras are deployed unevenly across different neighborhoods, which can lead to unequal policing.
It's a feedback loop. Okay, let's make this more concrete. Section 3. Let's look at some specific documented cases of this going wrong.
The Ring controversies are probably the best place to start. Amazon built this de facto surveillance network through partnerships with over 2,000 police departments.
2000.
Yeah. And before they changed their policy in 2024, the sources detail how Amazon was sharing over 10,000 videos a year with law enforcement, often without a warrant or even user knowledge.
That's a staggering number.
It is. And that's before you even get to the security breaches. The hackers gaining access to live feeds and harassing families, even children, through the speakers. It's terrifying.
And you mentioned human contractors listening in. That feels like it crosses a different line. What was the justification there?
The companies, both Amazon and Google, said they needed human reviewers to listen to and transcribe recordings to improve the AI's accuracy.
So to make the AI better.
Right. But the problem was, users had no idea that their private, sometimes deeply personal conversations were being audited by another human being.
This failure to disclose, it seems like a pattern.
It is. Look at the Google Nest Card. After it was already on the market, it was discovered that it had a built-in microphone that Google just hadn't mentioned in the specs.
They just left it out.
An intentional omission. And that just destroyed user trust. It showed how misaligned user expectations are with what's actually happening.
And beyond the surveillance, there are the massive security holes.
A constant threat. These devices are often the weakest link in your home network. A recent example from February 2025, the Mars Hydro breach. 2.7 billion records exposed. Emails, IPs, order info. Another breach in 2019 exposed 2 billion records and passwords, which led to full home takeovers.
So how are regulators even keeping up with this? You have the US and the EU with very different approaches to privacy.
The landscape is fragmented. Especially in the US, we have state laws like the CCPA in California, but they mostly just give you the right to opt out. There's no big, comprehensive federal privacy law for IoT.
So what can regulators even do?
The FTC has to go after them for things like unfair or deceptive practices like the settlements with Amazon for keeping kids' Alexa data forever. It's a bit of a workaround.
And how does that compare to the EU's approach?
It's fundamentally different. The GDPR in Europe is much stronger. It requires things like privacy by design, so privacy has to be built in from the start, and it requires explicit, real consent. That's why you see these massive fines like the 746 million one against Amazon.
But even with a strong law like GDPR, there are still gaps, right?
Yes, and that's the core challenge. Current laws aren't really built to handle ambient data. They struggle to classify a movement pattern or the sound of a cough as personally identifiable information, even though the inferences from that data are more revealing than your email address.
The law is playing catch-up to the technology.
A long way behind.
Okay, that brings us to Section 4. For our listeners who want the convenience but are now, deeply worried about all this, what can they actually do? How do you spot a risky device?
You have to learn the red flags. First, be very wary of any device with unjustified data transmission. If it's constantly sending huge amounts of data to the cloud, even when it's idle, that's a bad sign.
What else?
A huge one is a lack of local-only processing options. If the device is basically a brick without a cloud connection, it's designed for data collection, not for your privacy.
And what about the policies and marketing?
Read the policies. If you see vague language like sharing with our partners, that's a red flag. And watch out for that convenience over everything marketing pitch. It usually means they've cut corners on security. And finally, avoid anything with an unchangeable default password. That's just asking for trouble.
Okay, so if you already have these devices, what are the most effective hands-on things you can do to make yourself safer? Let's start with network segmentation. That sounds complicated.
It sounds technical, but it's actually pretty simple with most modern routers. You just need to put all of your IoT devices, the speakers, the cameras, all of it, on a separate guest network.
Why is that so important?
Because your IoT devices are your weakest link. If a hacker compromises your smart light bulb, segmentation means they're stuck on that guest network. They can't just jump over to your laptop that has all your financial data. It's a firewall, an essential buffer.
That makes a lot of sense. And what about physical steps?
Physical control is still your best friend. If you can, buy devices that have a physical switch to turn off the microphone or camera, an actual hardware cutoff.
And if it doesn't have one?
A piece of tape over the camera lens. Simple, but 100% effective. It can't see what's covered.
Okay, and lastly, diving into those complicated settings menus, what should we be looking for?
You need to review and restrict. Go through every privacy setting and turn off anything you don't use, especially things like voice history storage.
Yeah.
And turn on multi-factor authentication, MFA, everywhere you can. It makes it so much harder for someone to get in, even with your password.
And you mentioned choosing devices with E2E. What does that mean for my data?
It means end-to-end encryption. So the video or audio is encrypted on the camera itself and can only be decrypted on your phone. The key is that the company in the middle can't see it. It keeps your data off their servers and gives you the highest level of privacy.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. To sum it up, the thesis is that these always-on smart home devices are really convenience as a Trojan horse for surveillance.
It is. And the risks are all connected. You have the privacy erosion from the data capture. You have the security failures leading to breaches. And you have the societal harm from the chilling effect and biased policing.
And the sources seem to conclude that without a real conscious shift from all of us, we risk sleepwalking into a world where the unblinking eye in our homes becomes an unremarkable and ultimately inescapable feature of modern life.
Which leaves you with a final question to think about. Is that little bit of convenience really worth the cost of your sanctuary?